Dear Rabbi.
Good morning.
Okay, page 275. We're at Ois Gimel. We're now at the third Ois. So.
No, what's that? Oh, no. we finished the other one? Rabbi, you sure we finished it?
Yeah, sure. Of course. Okay. In fact, we're not at Ois Gimel. Yesterday we learned it from the beginning of Ois Gimel till after. Wait a second.
We got up to the phrase, but hatavas midosav v'hanagosav. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines, 9 lines down.
Okay, so we're talking here about the seichel within midos and how midos are important to complete seichel, and seichel is important for midos. This is what we discussed yesterday at length. Let's continue. The idea of the midos, they complete their mashlim and their ma'amas. They make truthful the moichin that is experienced. Without, good morning, Yonishin, without the midos shebeseichel shebemochin, you don't know if your moichin is true or false. Like we discussed yesterday, you could be on this path for so many years, and at the end you find out, I made a total mistake. I was living with a fantasy. I was living in an erroneous way. Why? Because I thought that so and so, and I thought about it. It's not as though I ran into it, but I made a decision, a thoughtful decision, but unfortunately it was wrong. So to avoid that, the Rebbe says, midos within the seichel will help you discern whether your seichel, your logic, is right or wrong. Right? Because, just for another moment, because intellect and rationale and logic, you can go anywhere. And there's no one to tell it whether it's right or wrong. Only when it comes to a place of midos, not even midos in the heart, but midos in the brain, as we've been discussing, right? The proof is in that pudding. If those midos are healthy and good, then you know that the seichel you're using is healthy and good. And if those midos are not, then you know that the seichel you're using is warped, is wrong. That's what he says. And look what he says further. K'maimer, as the famous saying goes, Ve'ein chochem kebal hanisoyin. You're not a chochem unless you are tested. You can pontificate and you can philosophize and you can have all kinds of deep thoughts. But until you are on the ground, those boots are made for walking, and you don't walk the ground, in the battleground, you're a nothing. There was the Chassid Rabbi Avram Drizin. I spoke about him many times. He was one of my mashpiyim, and I really respect his approach to life, not just to Chasidus, but to life. So he would say to fellow Chasidim, who were also pretty good Chasidim, he would say, if one is not ready to let himself be slaughtered, he's a nothing. And he came from that era, the 1920s and 30s, to fight Stalin, Yamach Shimon, and communism. So he would say, are you ready to be shechted? Are you ready to allow yourself to be shechted? And if you're not, you can be a big chassid, you can daven for hours and learn and shake and go to Fabrengens, go to the Rebbe, and He says, you personally are a nothing. Because you're not, it's all lip service. It's all very good. But I want to see you one day go out to the field and they want to catch you and send you away, and your children won't have what to eat and they won't have a father. You know? So he would say to his fellows, are we ready to be shechted? You know, it's a very all or nothing attitude. 1 second, Hilo.
It also seems to me that it's really impossible to know that about yourself. I mean, you could imagine it, you could fantasize it, but you really don't know.
But that's right.
The moment comes.
Right, so that's what it says. Ve'ein chacham.
Talk about it. We see so many cases of people who surprise themselves in the end.
Okay, so that's why it says here, ve'ein chacham kebal hanisayon. You don't become a chacham till you have the nisayon. You're not a chacham beforehand. You're not a chacham beforehand. So the Rebbe is using this phrase to explain that your seichel is not, you don't know if your seichel is right until the midos prove that your seichel is right. So, and again, I want to emphasize, we're not even talking yet about the midos shebelev, we're talking about the midos shebemochin. Like the example I gave yesterday from David HaMelech. Kirvas Elokim li tov. There is Elokim, there's Kirvas, and there's Li. There's God, there's the closeness of God, and there is, that's good for me. So we're not talking about the Li. The Li stage is the last stage, and that's a different experience. We're talking about the Kirvas. And that Kirvas tells you what type of Seichel it is. Okay. The Chochmosoi, Amdoloi, the Chachma stands for the person l'sakin davar b'poyil. Then after the midos kind of complete the seichel then stands for the person to complete him b'poyil b'hatavis midaisav anagaisav, in improving his character and his hanhoga, his behavior. Nefesh Olikis, so that's the Nefesh HaSichli. Nefesh Olikis, and then there is the godly soul, whose Sichli, Be'etzem Ohusai, it is Seichel in its very essence. Nefesh HaBahamis, in the Ikrei Midas. And the Nefesh HaBahamis is primarily Midas. Gam Sheyesh Bei Seichel Gamke, and although he also has Seichel, he has some logic. That's what Yoni asked me yesterday. In addition to the seichel that the animal drive has, that's applicable to the behavior, he has some of his own seichel. His retort to this remark is, even the seichel, how much seichel does he have, Yoni? Only that amount that's necessary for the midos, for behavior. And he says, V'hu, and how does that express itself? This is mamish a direct answer to your question, Yoni. V'hu lahavin mashatoiv loy. The amount of seichel he has is the amount that he needs to explain why this item is good for him. Ulahaskil ulischakim, and to comprehend. Eich lahasik adover ahu. How can I get this item that I want? Ulaham shitachbulois, and the seichel helps the animal drive find tachbulois is trickery, plots, all kinds of deception. Laharbos hoin va'osher. He used an example to gather wealth, ugdula v'chavod, and greatness and honor, kahai gavna. In other words, the first thing you decide is the nefesh habamis is I want to be great, I want to be very wealthy, and I want everyone to know about it. Now, if I'm going to come out and tell everyone I'm great or I'm wealthy, they'll spit at me. They'll say you're disgusting, you're an egomaniac. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the seichel, a little seichel, to find a clever way of dressing up my ego-driven self. So how much of seichel does the nefesh habamis use? That amount to carry out its tachbulos, its trickery. It uses seichel to justify its position with many arguments, with many tainos, to find favor in oneself. In other words, I did this and this. I'll tell you why I'm right that I did this and this, even though everyone else thinks I'm wrong. But I can't just say it out. I can't just say it. I just did it because I wanted to, because then I'll be laughed at. So I'm going to find some explanation and utilize my moach, my seichel, to justify my behavior. Says the Rebbe, this is not in accordance with the Torah. It's to find justification to all of the arguments and positions to justify oneself. And the midos of that individual at the time, are very strong, and very powerful. You're all passionate. You're all convinced that you are right and everyone else is wrong, and I'll tell you why I'm right, and I'll explain to you why it should be this way. And you can't talk to the person. You can't unconvince them, because the midos are burning at the time. Chazokos utkifos. The mashu reitze b'teikav God. The nefesh habamis. Listen to this. Whatever he wants, whatever he decides he wants with a great tokef, with a great passion. It's not that he wants it, but if you take it away, I still can live without it. No. I'll do anything and everything to get what I want. And just the opposite. And whatever he doesn't want to do, he also does with a passion. He hates doing it. And you can't get him to do it because he won't budge. So these are traits of the Nefesh Habamis. Sounds familiar? Next page.
Very familiar.
Yeah. Page 276. Das was the Nefesh Habamis will. Now he says it in good old geschmack, pleasurable Yiddish. Das was der Nefesh Habamis will. This, what the Nefesh Habamis wants. Will means wants, comma, will sehr stark. He wants it very strongly. Stark is strong. Sehr is very. Comma. Und das, was will nicht. And this, that he does not want, will nicht mit a toikev. He doesn't want it with a passion. So it's basically a Yiddish translation of what we read before in the Hebrew. The whole... Yes?
Rabbi, Rav Deitch once said to my brother-in-law and me that you can learn a lot of Chasidus through looking at kids.
You can learn a lot of Chasidus what?
Through looking at children. In other words, you see that children want something, and they're not going to say, there's not going to be any rationale. They're going to want it.
Right. So he said that should be an attitude that you have when you learn Chasidus, when you learn Torah. In other words, you should just want it and not give up. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Exactly.
So now the question is, Moshe, why? Why does the Nefesh Habamis have this mechanism? Says the Rebbe, I'll tell you why. Because you have to know what it is. And if you know what it is, you understand its behavior. Right? Mayach Shalat al-Lev, which Baruch was asked me about. Right? If you understand the Mayach, then you can deal with the Lev. So what is the Nefesh Habamis? What is its modus operandi? What makes it tick? V'hu lefi nefesh habamis be'etzem husay hu koyach hamasada. Now here we introduce another concept that's not discussed in many places in Chasidus, but it's very important. What is the Nefesh Habamis? And this goes back to something that I asked you about way when we started to learn Chasidus. What's the difference between the Yetzer Hara and the Nefesh Habamis? Yoni grew up learning Nechai in Berlin, and he heard the word Yetzer Hara 100 million times. Okay? In Lubavitch, in Chabad, we don't hear the word Yetzer Hara so much. We hear the word Nefesh Habamis. So Moshe comes into the Chabad house in I forget the city, in Chicago over there, and he hears a pshur in a shir about a Nefesh Habamis, an animal an animal drive, an animal side. It's like, come on, what's going on here? But these two terms that you hear are not contradictory. Yetzer hara is the classic word used in the Gemara and in Jewish writing, okay? Which is the more practical, and also the word yetzer is very important. Yetzer hara. It's an inclination. It's already a midah. It's a behavior. When you say inclination, that means I'm inclined to behave this way. Comes along the Alter Rebbe, and he says that there's something that motivates the inclination. And that's what I want to deal with, the Alter Rebbe says. Because as I said yesterday, that's what Chasidus is about. Chasidus is going a step before. What makes us behave a certain way? Says the Alter Rebbe, this is what we call a nefesh. Okay? So, he's not the first one to introduce nefesh, but the way he introduces it is unique to his style. Okay, I want to make that clear, because the word nefesh is found in Shemayin Prakim Rambam and earlier writings. So it's important to know. You'll say this to someone who's learned it, and they'll say, you're an ignorant person, you're not Ma'aretz, because nefesh already says earlier. It's true. But the formation and the style and adaptation of the way the Alter Rebbe uses nefesh is unique to his system of Chabad. And they have their system, which is more philosophical. Right, the Maral and the Rasag, Rabbi, and those sages and scholars, they took it more in the philosophical way, whereas the Rambam, whereas the Alter Rebbe and based on the Baal Shem Tov took it more in the Hasidic way. So anyway, what is a nefesh? A drive. A drive is inside you. And it's what makes you behave a certain way. So it's the inner core of the Yetzer hara. So it's on the same line, right? But it's a very different issue that we're tackling. So the question is, what is this nefesh? Says Chasidus, and the previous Rebbe brings it here, that the nefesh habamis. That's why we don't say Yonason habahamis. We don't say habahamis. We say nefesh habahamis, nefesh elikis, nefesh asichlis. Because what we're occupied with, yes, Hillel.
I was curious. First time I had this thought. The significant. Why is it habahamis? Why not nefesh bahamis?
Well, in Hebrew, in grammar, not that I'm an expert in, I believe the hay is called, not I believe, I know the hay is called the hay hayediyah. You've heard of the hay hayediyah?
That's exactly why I'm asking.
No, so that your question is answered with, your question answers it. You want to, you're asking because it's the nefesh that's the primary, not the bahamis. That's your question.
Well, I mean, so
we want to emphasize, one second, we want to emphasize that this nefesh, what is its main machshava? Ha-bahamis. This nefesh...
So if I in English, or I'm translating it into English, from English to Hebrew, and I'd say animal drive, I'd say nefesh bahamis.
Okay, it's fine. You could.
I'm just
because
I'm curious as to how to darshan out the hay there.
So what I'm saying is, you could say it nefesh bahamis, but then there's no dagush. There's no emphasis on the ikar of this nefesh. What does it want? Ha bahamis tells you that this nefesh that I'm talking about, what it really wants is bahamis, bahamis, and the hay in standard grammar, Hebrew grammar, is the hay hayadiyah. I mean, you can Hillel, you can ask this on any word. Why is there a hey hayadiyah? And what's the classic answer? The hey hayadiyah is to emphasize, and that's over here. But again, it's interchangeable in Chasidus. We're not learning dikduk, so sometimes we say nefesh bahamis, Or the way I remember being trained in my youth and learning Chasidus was, and hearing it, nefesh habahamis. That's the way I remember it. Nefesh hasichlis, nefesh ha'elokis. Anyway.
Go to the Bahamas.
What? Anyway, so what is this nefesh habahamis? Says the Rebbe, it's koyach hamisave. The third line, the first words. It's the power, the koach hamisave of taiva, of lust.
Temptation. Yeah, temptation.
Temptation.
But Rabbi, I have a question on this exact thing that you were saying, just like the two lines before, when the Rebbe is talking in Yiddish. When you're referring to the nefesh bahamis, the difference between the Yetzer Hara and the nefesh bahamis, where does the Baal Taiva come in? Does it come in between the two, or it's in the Yetzer Hara itself?
No, it's not. It's in the nefesh habamis. That's what we're learning now. The Baal there is the practicality and application of being a Baal Taiva. I'm indulging. That's Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Hara is I do it. But we're talking about where does it come from? That we're learning that comes from the nefesh habamis. The power of temptation, of tava, is much deeper. It's much deeper than just doing it. You know, we find in Chazal, the Alter Rebbe brings it in chapter 11 in Tanya, hirhure aveda kosher me'aveda. That's a Chazal. That's not Chasidus. Thoughts of an aveda are worse than an aveda. Why? Because the practicality of an aveda, you do it today and it's over, right? But the thought, if that's with you, that keeps on lingering on and on and on, and it's going to get you again. So the actual aveda, the transgression, once it's done, it's done. But the hirur, that's what he addresses in chapter 11 in Tanya, according to Chazal, is worse. So maybe we could use that Chazal to explain the difference between the Yetzer Hara and the Nefesh Habamis. The Nefesh Habamis is more similar to the Hirur, Avera, and the Yetzer Hara is similar to the Avera. And what is this Koyach HaMasava? So remember those words. Yes, Hillel.
I just wanted to say, I saw today in Rabbi Safrin's Sefer, which is his talks on the Sefer Baal Shem Tov, on Tefillah. He says, why do we need to make sure that we bring into words the things that we want in Tefillah? So he says, why? He says, because if it just remains in our thought, then the answer could also come just in our thought. So, you could have, I want a new house. So God gave you a new house. He gave you a picture in your mind of a new house. So no, we want to say, I want a new house.
Right. So now look at the Yiddish translation, and he puts it in good words. A koyach von glusten, a power, a koyach of desire. To glust means to desire. Koyach HaMesava means the power, the trigger within the soul that is there for one thing called desire. And since the Nefesh HaBahamis is from the lower levels of what's called Klipas Noga, the husk, and the spiritual negative energy called Noga, we'll just leave it at that for now. It's Koyach, Yonason. It melubash, it dresses itself up. Obvious is in good old Yiddish grobkeit, coarseness, grob. That's the word of means grob. In other words, because it comes from a place where the energy is very concealed, this nefesh habamis enjoys grobkeit, and it does so with a tava. It does so with desire and temptation. And he says, that's why the only desire and will of the Nefesh Habamis is to take care of its own body, Umeshuka. Meshuka comes to the word sheka, which means immersed. Umeshuka bezeh ma'od, and it's very immersed in feeding its bodily needs, bodily pleasures, all about the guf. Now you look, Yoni, the next line, you see it's two things. Everyone seek open words. And when the Yetzer Hara malbish, it encloses, it dresses the koyach hamesava shel nefesh habamis. Now, so you see clearly, there's a Yetzer Hara and there's a koyach hamesava of the nefesh habamis. So here he says it clearly that there's two things, and what is the nefesh habamis, the koyach hamesava, the power of temptation. And when the Yetzer Hara latches on to that, and it says, now I'm going to become all temptation oriented. Then God forbid he falls from step to step. He becomes now corporeal, chumrius. And at that point, he has no comprehension and no understanding of something that's intellectual. You're talking to a wall. He is all ta'ava. He is all completely addicted. This is, again, what I would call the addictive state. And you know, you can't talk to the person logic. They're not there. Nevertheless, what is Hashem's intent? That we should refine this nefesh habamis. What Hashem wants is the following, Yoni. We should take the power of temptation that's within the nefesh habamis, yishtamesh boy, and transform it, that it should serve la'avodas Hashem, to serve Hashem, doing mitzvahs, and to the service of the Hara Tefillah. Hashem wants take that same passion that you had for a taiva and use that. And why is that? Because going back to what I said earlier, that since the nefesh habamis does not equal Yetzer Hara, so Yetzer Hara is already a form of Ra, Yetzer Hara. That has to be obliterated. Nefesh habamis is neutral, and therefore it shouldn't be obliterated, but rather transformed. We want you to take the same koyach that you had to eat that cheeseburger, and with the same koyach, eat an apple and make a bracha. The same koyach that you had for hurting and cheating and lying and sinning and everything else, take that energy and use it for Hashem. And we saw this and see this in the Baal Tshuva. When the person gets, and sometimes, we say, oh, you whacked out, like you're acting like a Baal Tshuva. Yes, it happens to be that in the beginning, because you're so intense and you regret so much what you did, and you want to use that fire now for Hashem, so you tend to go off a little bit on the deep end till you get back to the middle, like the Rambam says, which is fine. That's why we had, like I said yesterday, a Rabbi Lipsker in Morristown, where many of these guys that came in were very wacky, in a way. They were brilliant, but they were wacky. I remember one, he remembers those guys, a Nazir. He decided to be a Nazir, so he comes into the yeshiva being a Nazir. Now, there was a holy guy in Yerushalayim, the Nazir Yerushalayim. Yeah, but this guy was coming out of Columbia or Harvard or wherever he was coming from, and all of a sudden, and he didn't know any Torah, and he wants to be a Nazir. You couldn't talk to him. I remember I tried speaking to him. I used to hang out with the guys at the Ferris and try to listen to their stories. Researching, not only now, I've been researching when I was 17 to hear people's stories. Try to understand where they're coming from. And I go over to the Nazir in Morristown. I remember, and I say, so what is this about you? I hear you're a Nazir. Like, what is it about? And he gave me his position and his argument. And I didn't say anything. You know, first of all, I just met him, right? But I'm just saying, or other fellows, you know, the intense tshuva is powerful. That's what we're saying. The koyach hamasava is a very powerful thing. So in the beginning, when you use it, it might look funny, it might sound funny, and then you mellow out and chill out, and you go back to the beginning, to the middle, and you integrate with the community and with the more normal way, the way people do things. But this is not to dismiss the koyach hamasava. I think I told you there was a mashpia, Reb Shoel Brook, who said he would rather have a wild student, a Choviv, we call them Chovivim, than a tamed student. Because he knows from those wild students, 1, 2, or 3 of them are going to become future leaders. From the people who are nice boys and nice girls and, you know, okay. But you're not going to find, you know, excellence coming from them and leadership. It's usually not that way. And I don't want to say names, but I actually know some people who were, while they were teenagers, very wild and very cuckoo. And later they mentally out and they became leaders. So there is something to be said about, you know, looking at this koyach hamasava. And by the way, that's what the Rebbe saw in the 60s in the counterculture revolution. Whereas most other rabbis and organizations were going nuts and crazy, and they're losing their kids, and they're becoming hippies and growing hair, walking with torn pants, and smoking marijuana and LSD, and they're going nuts. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe says there's certain good things we can learn from a hippie. That's what he told someone who was learning in a Litvish yeshiva in the 1960s. And he started to grow a beard, and his yeshiva administration gave him a hard time. And he went to the Rebbe, and he said, you know, he's in a Litvish yeshiva, and he sees the importance of growing a beard, but they're giving him a hard time. So the Rebbe told him, and this is online, you should listen to it, it's on a Living Torah, on Gem. The Rebbe told this guy, he's from Detroit, he's a kashrus administrator today, the Rebbe told him, learn from the hippies. That they grow their beards and they do what they feel is right. There's something valuable to that. The koyach hamasava. Oh. Don't dismiss the koyach hamasava. Don't dismiss it. Keen in on the nakuda, what's behind it, and then you'll have good results. So the Rebbe comes out in the 60s, and he starts in 1962, Hadar Torah, the Balshuv Yeshiva in Crown Heights, and he encourages Rabbi Goldstein to start his yeshiva, the Diaspora Yeshiva, and the first Bali Tshuva yeshivas begin during the 60s, and Lubavitcher Rebbe had a hand in them. Why? Because he did not dismiss the taiva of the 60s. He transformed. He looked to transform the taiva of the 60s. And the same is today. When we have young people who are rebelling, so you can easily dismiss them. You can so easily dismiss them. Or you could focus in and hear what they're saying. Remember I told you that word, that a person, Mr. Goldstein, he had a printing press here in Borough Park on 46th and 16th. And in his older age, he would take a walk or so, and I met him. And I started to talk to him, and he said, I have a word for you. It says in the Torah, in Parshat Kiseitze, Kesi Eliyish, when a person will have Ben Seider or Meida, a rebellious child, that doesn't listen to Koil Avav Imai, to the voice, doesn't hearken to the voice of his father and mother, so shall be the punishment. So he said the interpretation. Kesi Eliyish, Ben Seider or Meida. Do you know why someone has a son or daughter who are rebellious? Because the parents don't listen to his voice, to his cry. Because the parents are stuck on saying, this is the way it has to be. And by the way, it's not easy not to think that way. Because we're all raised in a certain way. And to vacate your position and your beliefs and those things that have proven to you to be correct. And here you have to step back. It's very hard. It's easy to say it, but it's very hard to implement it. So this gentleman said to me, this is the taich. You know why you have a Ben Seder Amaita? Because lo yishma b'koil. Not he didn't listen to his parents. You didn't listen to his cry. So what we're saying here is that the koyach hatayva that we're identifying here in the Maamar of the Nefesh Habamis is valuable. It's a very valuable thing. Who would you rather have? Someone who shakes his head to whatever you say? Yes, you're the best. You're the greatest. You're all right. Or someone who says you're wrong. I was just reading as I'm working on a book that entails in Europe. I mean, you probably won't believe what I'm going to say, but it says it. I read it. Someone who was there. He says that the students, the Rosh Hashiva Rabbi, his name was Rabbi Yosef Meir Bloch, from 1910 to 1929, he was the Rosh Hashiva, and he would come in to give the shir. Him or Rabbi Gordon, Eliezer Gordon, the one who preceded him, who passed away in 1910. Anyway, one of them, he comes in and gives the shir, and he starts schmoozing and dialoguing with the students. That was the style. And they started to, dialogue back with him. And all of a sudden, one of them would say to him, what you're saying is stupidity. What you're saying is nonsense. And he would right away refute. And they would go back and forth. Could you imagine teenagers talking this way to this goyim, to this genius, and this personality? But that was a style. That was a certain Litvish style that they had, where what's called, I think I told you this once, the Rischa D'Oraisa, the passion for Torah warranted and required this format of learning. And if you didn't argue this way, you weren't a star student, So there's something very special about the Koyach HaMasaveh that we need to hold on to. But of course, like it says here, for Torah mitzvahs. Let's read the Yiddish before we finish. Glustin, again, the word glustin is the Yiddish translation of tava, of taiva. Glustin, to desire, to learn. Not just I want to learn. I have a passion, Yoini. I have a taiva to learn. Glustin to tana mitzvah. I have a taiva to do a mitzvah. Und davenen mit achayis. And I want to daven with a vitality and enthusiasm. So now the question is, who is going to discern and make this experience godly? Says the Rebbe, it's the Nefesh Elikis. In other words, the Nefesh Habamis is the Koach HaMesaveh, is the power of desire and temptation and lust and that glustin. But who now takes it and brings it into godly matters of learning, davening, and doing mitzvahs? Says the Rebbe, it's the Nefesh Elikis. Now we also have, wait a minute. Nefesh Elikis, thank you that you want this, but the Nefesh Habamis says, I want just the opposite. I want to party with this energy. I want to break the curfew. It's nighttime. It's a nightlife. It's Thursday night. We have to go out to Dizengoff and party, or to Ben Yehuda and party. There's no work on Friday. What, am I going to stay home like a sleeping dog? So how do you accomplish peace between the Nefesh Habamis, the intermediary? Look what he says. The intermediary between the Nefesh Elikis and Nefesh Habamis, who Nefesh HaSichlis is the human rational soul. Seichel. Seichel says, hey guys, if you go out tonight, Thursday night, to party, you're getting arrested. If not arrested, you're getting a fine. So you better party at home. Okay? Do you want to sit in jail or pay $1,000, or you want to stay out of trouble? Use your seichel. So the nefesh hasichlis is key, And this goes back, Moshe, to the point that the Nefesh HaSichlis is what? Is the place of free will. It is the drive within man that discerns whether this is right or wrong. That either, who's right now? Nefesh Habamis or Nefesh Olikis? We'll stop here, Emitz Hashem, and we'll continue on Sunday. Any questions, comments, anything? I mean, I think this was a good discussion, wasn't it?
Unbelievable.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Unbelievable.
Shabbos.
I every time I learn.
I feel like you're talking to me.
Yeah,
Specifically like
that's
to me, like
talking to all of us. That's why we learn these Maamorim. You know, I could learn so many other types of Chasidus Maamorim, but the previous Rebbe, he's a psychologist par excellence. He mamish goes into you and he takes it apart so that you can, exactly the kishkis. And so that you have food for thought. So this Shabbos, when you're daven and you're under your talis, you try to remind yourself of some of the things that we learned and think about them. And then maybe at the Shabbos table discuss it with your wife and your children and guests. And then it becomes very, very real. Everyone have a great Shabbos and only Psulas Taibas. We'll see everyone Sunday. Zay gesund. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos.